mean, it's insane even for the history of the modern Border Patrol, because these tactics that they're using, and I'll say, I always say I'm from a border community. I'm familiar with this force, and I've worked at the Department of Homeland Security. I understand their mission set. This is so far outside of their mission set. And what I want people to understand is this agency has been resistant to training and reform for a very long time. I'm not surprised that Bovino maybe has not been used to using a body cam. There have been many administrations who've opened up the door to reform of CBP and have failed to do so. But the border operations that that securing the border is just a different mission set than what we're seeing in Chicago. And I'm really scared because Congress has, in a way, treated Border Patrol like a militarized force for very serious threats that they've identified. And now all of those agents, whether it's tear gas, whether it's drones, they have an entire sort of their own air capacities, and they're all being used, it seems, and concentrated in this community. And that is unprecedented, and which is why I think Judge Ellis was completely right to do a new checks and balances. And I can feel Border Patrol's resistance in their statements to being held accountable because they haven't been for a very long time. And so this is making a lot of Americans realize that.
They haven't been held accountable for a very long time. Their power is about to be increased. You have sort of a wiping out of ICE leadership. They're going to be replaced by people who do not have the same training, who are not held to the same standards. If you were in Congress right now, what would you do?
I think if I were doing oversight, I would want all information about the firings and displacement of ICE leadership, who have been trained and have for years been building relationships with communities to build trust on enforcing immigration law. So I'd want information about those firings. I'd also want information about how the resources that Congress just sent to CBP are now going to be used, because those resources went to the border, right? They went to the border wall, they went for equipment at the border. My question actually is, who's securing the border right now if we're seeing more Border Patrol officers in our interior cities? And that's a big question for Congress. If I were Democrats, I'd be saying, how many people are perhaps getting away from Border Patrol right now because you're focusing on children and you're using your tear gas resources we paid for? So I think I would be looking at the details of these operations, as well as asking about the deal with the Navy. Why are we paying our service members in the Navy to set up tent facilities for people with civil immigration violations? That is information the American people need, because are they going to build these facilities outside of every major city heading into an election year? Do you see how that could be an infrastructure of surging in more officers to operate those facilities? I mean, Simone, you're completely right. This is strategic. It's happening now. It's unfolding as they promised. And I really do need to see some lawmakers in the streets in Chicago. It's the front lines. And I worry that Americans think this is just what you do to enforce immigration law, and this is not how you enforce immigration law. No president has done this.
Can we just put up the picture of the kids being tear gassed?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's
of the children being tear gassed.
No, let's do that.
Chicago.
And while you're looking at that, I want to go back to a point that you made, which I think is at the root of this moment. You mentioned that that our border security, our ICE agents, the agency is resistant to accountability, is resistant to doing the things that those who are involved with law enforcement, all right, as we see here, they're acting like police in some sense, are resistant to the idea of having that accountability. Why? I mean, what is that something from their origin story that somehow they were told, y'all special, y'all don't have to obey the rules and regulations like other people who enforce the laws of this country?
Yes. I mean, so quick history lesson, right? In the post 9/11 era, there was a position by Congress in the formation of the Department of Homeland Security that protecting the border was of utmost importance. However, that also was going on to a legal regime where Border Patrol has heightened powers in 100 miles of the border zone. So they actually can take more extreme tactics and have less of a constitutional protection in those areas. So people need to remember that as this agency was growing, they were also able to do things that wouldn't be appropriate in an interior city, right? That was only in the border. So now I worry that they'll take those same more extreme tactics, the type where I was stopped when I was 12, when I was 15, when I was working for my congressman, I would be stopped by the Border Patrol, right? And they're used to that. They use racial profiling. The courts have acknowledged it. That is all spreading into our communities. So it's a history and an agency we've created and that Congress has created. But for far too long, people haven't scrutinized what border security really means. And I think that's a problem, especially as Democrats are trying to find a way forward on immigration. They're confusing supporting the border with conflating it with some of these bad tactics that are happening.